Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to quickly check out Line Wars. Specifically, we'll be going over some beginner tips to help get new players acclimated into the game. Keep in mind, however, this is not a full comprehensive tutorial. There's just so much to learn in this game. All of these are videos that you can watch right from inside the game. I can't possibly go over all of that in one video, so I'm just going to sort of just give you some beginner tips now that I'm about 5 or 6 hours in and I have a pretty much basic understanding of how things operate. and who knows, like down the line when I come back to this game later on and I forget how to play it, I'll just watch my own video, you know. Sometimes that's why I make these videos, because I forget. Anyway, Line War, beginner tips to help new players get acclimated into the game. Hopefully this will help you out. First and foremost, before we even get into the game, I highly recommend doing one of two things, or both. First of all, set the handicaps to your favor. In the drop-down, you'll be able to adjust both player and AI handicaps. This will affect how well a player will be off when they first start the game, as well as their income rate throughout the game. So don't be afraid to lower the AI's handicap to make him worse, so that you have a better chance of surviving your first couple of times in. And you can also make some lopsided teams so that you can put a bunch of AI on your side, watch how they do it and watch what they're doing, and possibly take some notes in the process. So the drafting process is optional. You can toggle that off before you start your game, but I actually like it. It gives players a chance to draft their possible starting location. And the way that works is, when it's your turn to pick a location, you're going to pick on an area. And if your opponent just so happens to pick that exact same spot or somewhere near it, all of the shared areas that were both picked are grayed out, meaning neither of you can start there. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to grab land that is high in value, and that simply means has a lot of icons. If you take a look at the map, you'll notice there's little wheat symbols, and it looks like there's cities and different things like that. Ideally, what you want to do is pick a start location that's going to make you both energy and money. I'll go over that later. Just try and get as many symbols as you can in the areas that you're drafting. Finally, when the draft is over, you'll be asked to pick a starting location within the areas that you won during the draft, and you just pick one starting location. You don't get all of them, you just pick one of the starting locations within your drafting areas, and that's where you actually start the game. Now, whenever you do start, you'll be able to, and this is optional, buy land that is connected to your starting location so that you get a head start on territory that you actually control. Ideally, you want to buy out this territory, the resources that are hard-coded on the map. You want to just buy those as soon as possible if they are connected to your starting location. This ensures that you'll be able to construct buildings on hard-coded resource spots right away. This will help jumpstart your economy. So, unlike a standard real-time strategy game, you don't actually select your units and move them. Rather, you give commands on the battlefield. There's 3 ways to move units, from what I can see anyway. You can click on a map, and it'll create a little circle, and every unit within the radius of that circle will be attracted to the very center. That's one way to move units. Now, keep in mind, these different circles that you create and the paths that you draw, that's the second way to move, will by default only be programmed to move basic troops and artillery tanks from the factory. But you can click on these individual paths and circles and specify what units actually utilize those commands. The third way to move a unit is via a line. I only use lines for defense. We'll get into that in a little bit, but you can actually draw a line and your troops will just sort of line up, in the line that you created. So let's say you do move your units to neutral territory or enemy territory, and they're not capturing it. You don't see the little capture circle appearing. Why is that? Well, on the bottom left, there's a little bullseye button, and you can click that multiple times. You want to make sure the flag is showing. If the flag is not showing, they won't capture that territory. More than likely, they're just designed or programmed to walk there, but not actually capture it, along the way. So if you're wondering why your troops aren't capturing territory that you've moved them to, make sure on the bottom left you've got that little like target/bullseye, whatever it is. It's like a little scope target thing. Make sure you click that enough times to where the flag is actually showing. That will allow troops to capture. Now, keep in mind, this will not affect existing lines you've already drawn, so you have to click on each individual command, circle, path, line, whatever, and make sure that each one of those is configured that way. Now, if you draw a path and your units aren't moving, maybe you've got an existing path or circle, command, whatever, that's holding them up. Delete unwanted commands by selecting it and hitting delete. So once players are done drafting and picking a starting location and hopefully buying land around their starting location with economic hardpoints on it, players will get something called pre-capital. And pre-capital is just a pool of resources that players get that allow them to construct buildings instantaneously. You can put down military structures instantly. You can put down economic structures instantly. But again, that pool is affected by handicaps. So some players may have more pre-capital than others. Once you blow through pre-capital, then players will have to wait for their buildings to construct normally. So why exactly are you capturing territory and spending your pre-capital on economic structures, whatever? So there are two main resources in this game. You've got your economy, like your money. There's a little like coin pile in the upper right-hand corner. This is the money that you spend whenever you construct something. And there is maintenance in this game. So as you're constructing buildings and building tanks and creating military units and airfields and all this other crap, you're going to have to pay maintenance costs. So it's very important that you keep up with this by placing down farms and like towns in the environment. Again, these are all hard-coded spots on the map. You can't put a farm anywhere. Rather, you go to the build menu, you click on, say, I think it's the industry button, and then you can put like that on top of a flashing farmland somewhere, and that will generate economy for you. Energy, on the other hand, is used whenever you move pretty much anything but a trooper unit, like tanks and ships and airplanes. Anytime you move them, you spend energy. And if you run out of energy, all of your units become very susceptible to damage. So you want to make sure that you've got a lot of energy, and to do that, find little oil wells on the map, and you'll be able to put like refineries over top of them to get energy. If you don't have any available, that might be bad, but you can also build power plants anywhere, but these power plants are not as efficient as refineries. I mentioned towns earlier. Like farms, there are hard-coded spots on the map where you can put towns down, and these will also generate economy for you. But what's cool about towns is that they can be upgraded into cities. However, while cities are better, like they reward you with more economy, you have to make sure that all of the connected industries are built on first. So you kind of have to like zoom out and see what industries are near you. You also see little brown lines on the map kind of hinting as to what this town is connected to. But once you have an industry on all of those hard-coded locations, only then will you be able to upgrade your town into a city. Earlier, I kind of hinted that there was a third way to move units via a line. And again, units will just kind of line up in this line, but there's also a shield that you can click on in order to make them take like a defensive stance. They'll build barricades, and it's really cool looking. So you can actually create choke points with these things. However, just make sure they're facing the right direction. The barricades will go on the solid black line, and the shaded area behind is where they'll sort of just hunker down. So make sure that they're facing the right direction before you kind of leave the camera or move the camera away from what they're doing. You can always delete them and redraw them again later. And real quick, you can actually click on both the line button and the path button multiple times in order to create layers. So you can create a line of 1 and they'll just line up along that one line. Or if the Roman numeral 3 is showing on the line, you can create a layered line of 3. So you can have like 3 barricades, one behind the other. Really cool. So I think that covers almost everything. I mean, capture territory, put things on hard-coded spots in order to make money and energy. That's the standard gameplay loop. So as long as you're doing those things, as long as you're making units and you're capturing territory and you're earning income across both energy and economy, then you're doing it right. That being said, getting there can sometimes be frustrating. For example, you'll start learning that as you create different military buildings, like you've got airfields and seaports and factories and barracks, they will produce like the default unit. Like the airfield will produce these helicopters, but you can also build like aircraft interceptors and bombers, and you can actually click on these buildings and select what they make. That's fine. But what the game doesn't tell you, at least initially, is that your path isn't set up to accommodate them. So if I could stress anything, is that make sure that when you're creating paths from one location to another, that you're specifying what units are going to travel along them. And to know that you've messed up, it'll become apparent. Because you'll have, like, say your troopers move, but your tanks will just be sitting there. And you're like, well, wait, I have a path drawn. These guys are moving. Why isn't this particular unit type actually moving? Why aren't they doing anything? Here, it's probably because the path that you created for these troopers or tanks or whatever for everything isn't configured properly. There are buttons on the bottom of the screen that allow you to select and deselect specific unit types. You can even draw, which is really cool, a line from one shore to another. And assuming you've got like transport ships in the general area, they will automatically ferry troops over. And that's really cool. But again, they won't ferry what they're not programmed to ferry. So the biggest thing I have to stress is check your pathing to make sure that they are carrying the units that you want. With all of that said, there's a lot more to this game than what I just went over. So just be aware that these beginner tips will probably get you about 80% of the way there. You're still going to struggle. If I had any other advice to give you, is just be patient. Once you get past the learning curve and start figuring things out, you can take one more concept, just keep learning it until you finally get it all. And I'm still not there, so don't feel bad if you don't get it right away. So anyway, hopefully this helped you out. If you have any tips you'd like to leave, feel free to leave them in the comments below. This is Vince. Thanks for watching. Catch y'all next time. Take care.